Okay, let's see. Testing one, two, three. We have audio. The question is, do we have live stream? Oh my gosh. Hold on a second. This one's 20 seconds behind. So, yeah, looks like we have live stream. Looks like we have live stream. Let's check it on the phone. Phone's always a good kind of an arbiter to see. My channel, yeah. Streaming speed mystery, yeah. Okay. Let's test it. One, two, three. We have audio. Question is, do we have live stream? There we do. All right. That's good stuff. Good stuff. The internet is so much fun when it works. All right. Hello, Ken. The audio and video are good as compared to what, last week? Yeah. Yeah, the audio and video are good. Thank you, Bill. Yes, indeed. I'm delighted. Last week was my semi-annual or annual reminder of what an idiot I am. Let's see if we can do. There we go. All right. So we have an extra bad show today just to make up for last week. Oh my gosh, that was so painful. It wasn't painful in the process. It was kind of like have you ever had an injury where you know you must be injured pretty badly because it doesn't hurt at all. Um, you're so stunned that there's no pain. That's the way it was last week. There was no pain. I was going along having a great little show, didn't have a clue that it was a disaster. Good example of what not to do. Or in my case, Bill, a good example of what I didn't do, which was, yeah, I forgot to click a button. So there we go. Hello, Mark from Tennessee. Glad to have you. Good to see you. It's going to be an interesting little show today. We kind of have a makeup. Well, last week was the week where we talked about how many different ways you could get video out of vMix. And I'll be darned if somebody didn't come up with another way. We found 31 ways last week to get to get video out of vMix, assuming 8 cameras. That's what the assumption was, that there are 31 ways to get video, to get an output from vMix. Let's put it that way, get an output, video and audio. And yeah, somebody said, Tom, you forgot to mention live LAN. Well, we did. We did forget to mention live LAN. So if you're not familiar with live LAN, live LAN is the ability for vMix to send your output, which is of course what you see here is my output, over your own local network to another device on your local network. And you get a URL, which I think is like, let's see, it's going to be like, you're in this case, the URL is like 192.168.1.114. That's my output from vMix, colon, and then I think the live LAN output is 8088. I'm looking at my vMix social right now, which is 8089. I could turn the live LAN on, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Live LAN. And if we turn it on, yeah, okay. So now it's on, and it comes on. Yeah, it comes on at 8088. And do we have a desktop capture we can show what it looks like? No, of course not. Yep. So we'll stop it. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. It was bogging my network apparently. Let's see. Let's check that again. I'm trying to do an indirect lighting kind of thing off my monitor and I'm not able to see anything. All right, let's see. So let's start the live LAN again. start to, and we'll see what we get here. Send, receive. Don't see a whole lot of changes there. And now it's flashing. Huh. So we'll stop it. That's interesting. That's sending the live LAN over my local area network affects. Well, let's try it one more time. And we'll view the status. I'm not sure what I'm looking at. Never mind. Never mind. We'll do it again some other day when we're focusing on that. We're not focusing on that today. So yeah. All right. Do we still have a stream? Checking 1, 2, 3. We still have a stream. Yeah, there we go. All right. And we've got just a few more minutes here before showtime. I hope maybe you're making some plans to go to NAB in April in Las Vegas. I am. Haven't got my plans formalized yet, but I will this week. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be a good show. I think there are going to be a lot of people there because I think last year it was probably down, I don't know, maybe 50% from previous years. So there was a lot of room to walk. I've been there other years where it's just, elbow to elbow trying to get through. And I think there were a lot of folks not from the US that were not there. I think the Asian market didn't show up. And I think there are other parts of the world, maybe the European market, that was not interested in traveling to the US this time. So, yeah. So, Eric Tabor, you want to get the show on the road? Well, this week's show includes actual live video and live audio at lovely 4K 60. And we're going to talk about that today. That's going to be the subject of our conversation about resolutions and bit rates and internet speeds and frame rates and how all that stuff works together. It's like a giant algebraic equation with 4 variables. So we'll try to plug in some numbers for some of those variables and see if we can't make some sense of it. Algebra was one of my favorite subjects in school. Yep, really, really liked algebra. Liked math. Could have been a math major, except imaginary numbers just didn't do it for me. So there you go. Hey, Otis. Good to see you. Glad to have you. Glad you could make it. Let's see. We got some vMix socials here. Hello, Michael. Welcome, sir. Checklist? Really? People still do that? Nah. I should have. But I'll tell you, the thing that tripped me up last week was would not have been on my checklist because it's something I've just recently added. Basically, it's what is it? How would we call it? Why didn't it work automatically? There's a button in YouTube that somehow I didn't used to ever push to start streaming, and now I do. And apparently last week, I forgot. So there we go. That was the problem. You had an idiot at the controls. What more can I say? Enough said. No, sir. So for today's class, you're going to need a pen and paper and maybe even a calculator, because we're going to be doing some, what for some of you might be higher math. Oh, let's see. Let's go ahead and turn this back on here. There we go. Ah, that's what I was looking for right there. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. And you do sort of reach a point where you just know. And if you're like me and you're an idiot, you think you know. And in my case, I knew that, but I was distracted. And that's the real purpose of a checklist. I mean, here in this studio, I am the only one here. So there's not much that normally distracts me on a regular basis. But I must have been distracted with something last week. Funny part is you film in 4K and end up streaming in 720. Well, but if you record in 4K, sometimes that'll save your bacon big time. At my church, we record 1080, but we stream 720 because I don't trust the internet. Let's put it that way. I guess we could stream 1080 now. I probably should try that. Yeah. All right. Well, let's little clock down here says we're ready to get this show going. So, doggone it, let's start. We're going to use our lovely XK80 from X-Keys. We're going to hit the left-hand purple button here, which should say intro, but it says FTB Part 1. And this was the bad old days when I didn't understand. When I wasn't as smart as what I was now. Yeah. Ken says, put your confidence monitor further downstream. You got to help me on that one. I don't understand what you mean. We can't start this show until I understand what you're talking about. Further downstream. You mean because I appear to be looking up like this at myself? Maybe. We're waiting for Ken. We're waiting for Ken. It's okay. If we don't hear from him in a reasonable period of time. Ken saved my bacon a couple of years ago. We had the Streaming Idiots meet up actually on the floor of NAB. The PTZ Optics was letting us use their booth, and they hosted part of it. And we were bringing mixed nuts because that used to be a sort of a thing with the Streaming Idiots group. You know, if we shared refreshments after the show in the post show, and so occasionally somebody would say that they were bringing mixed nuts because that was evidence of the audience. Anyway, it was a you have to be there kind of thing. And so we found out that mixed nuts on the floor of NAB provided by the caterer is $100. I think it was $94 a pound. So Ken smuggled in like a couple $100 worth of mixed nuts. It was great. All right, the confidence monitor should show live. Yes. Confidence monitor shows live. I love it. All right, let's get the ball on the road. Get the show on the road. Get the ball in play, shall we? We're hitting the button. Here we go. We're having a disagreement in the chat, and so if you've missed out on the chat, you want to go to YouTube and get in on the chat. I think the YouTube the recorded YouTube actually captures the chat too. So you can kind of scroll back through the chat and kind of, it doesn't match up though with the live show. Well, although it may have a way where it does that. I'll have to check on that. Anyway, so we've got a little disagreement going on in the chat. It'll be interesting to kind of unwind that. Welcome to Streaming Idiots. Welcome to actually a show that gets streamed live when it's supposed to, because some idiot hit the red button like he was supposed to this week, but didn't last week. So yeah, my apologies. Last week we did a wonderful show. Oh, the first 20 minutes of the show were just spectacular. The pre-show, I was spot on. My humor was just, it was just priceless. Fortunately, at least the show portion was recorded. The pre-show portion was not recorded. And apparently the pre-show portion and the first 20 minutes of the show were not even streamed because I didn't press the red button. I mean, that is such a rookie mistake. We were talking in pre-show, well, you're here and you've seen the pre-show, about playlists. Yeah, here's the thing. Would I rather use a playlist and have to suffer through it every week or have to suffer through a major mistake once a year? That's a good question. Now, if somebody were paying me to do this, it would be different. I would be using a checklist every week, because the pressure that comes to bear when you have a paying client is different than when it's a show in the back end of the living room. This is not really the back end of the living room, but there was a day when it was. So yeah, if I were a true professional, I would probably use a checklist, because there would be a lot of things that would probably be unique from week to week. And here on this show, there's very little that is unique from week to week. It's the same lovely background that Dr. Charles Campbell gifted me 7 years ago, maybe 8. I don't remember. Bless his heart. So yeah, that'd be the story. So today we're going to talk. Oh, last week we talked about different ways of getting video out of vMix, whether it's the output or whether it's an individual input or the preview or whatever it might be. We came up with 31 different ways, assuming that you had 8 cameras, because vMix will allow you to output all of your cameras over NDI. And I just figured 8 was a good number to sort of pick. So I picked 8 and figured we would stay there. But somebody told me, Tom, live LAN can count as an output too. Now, it only stays on your local area network, but it is out and it can be distributed, throughout a complex, whatever you want to do. Live LAN would be number 32. So 32 ways to get video out of vMix. Thought it was pretty cool. So this week we're going to talk about streaming and bit rates and resolutions and frame rates and internet speeds, all those things together. It's going to be like this giant algebraic equation where we have multiple variables, and then you plug in the numbers, and then you play with the numbers in order to get the right result. And we'll use my studio as an example, as good as any, I guess. I have AT&T internet here, which I think is just sort of a souped up version of their old DSL, DSL on steroids. It's still it's still a 2-wire phone connection, I think. And I'd unplug it and check, but then you would go away. I would go away. I get 100 megs down and 20 megs up. Excuse me. Goodness gracious. And that is pretty consistent. I've had it for several years. It's if it's there, if it's working, occasionally, rarely it doesn't. But if it's there and working, it's 100 down and 20 up. And the general rule of thumb on live streaming, means you can break it, is that you shouldn't use more than 50% of your available tested bandwidth. Available, tested bandwidth. Tested it this morning. I know I have 20 available as upload, but I tested it to confirm it. It's like trust and verify. People will say, well, I'm paying for 100. Well, are you getting 100? Well, I got 60, I got 40, I got 30. Sometimes I don't have any. Yeah, that's the thing. So if you're live streaming and you're using 50% of your available tested bandwidth, you're already at a disadvantage. And the reason is because you want to have the ability to ebb and flow as the internet ebbs and flows. Now here, my 20 is pretty consistent, but I've live streamed using other services here and from my home when I worked out of my house that I would get as much as 20 or 30% of fluctuation of bandwidth during the course of an hour. So if you're live streaming and you're using 80% of your bandwidth, you're not going to have any headroom. Plus, there's also other things that are always going along besides your unique your unique streaming speed. They're always that. So there we go. So we know we have a cap. In my case, my cap is 10. I choose to ignore that cap and I stream using 70% of my available tested bandwidth. Today I'm streaming at 14 megabits per second. You say, 14? Why are you streaming at 14, Tom? Holy cow. Well, because number one, I want to look good to you. Number two, I'm streaming just as a long-term test, 4K 60. And we're going to get into those numbers in just a minute. 4K 60 requires a lot of bandwidth, especially the 60, because 60 is twice 30 and 30 is 2 times as, 60 is twice. Yeah. It takes a lot of bandwidth. I'm struggling with these numbers. Just wait till we get into some of the higher numbers. So yeah, today we're streaming at 14 megabits per second in vMix. We're on a 10-core CPU with a RTX 2080 graphics card, using a PTZ Optics Move 4K camera. It has the capacity to do 4K 60. That's why we picked it today. It is an NDI HX3 or 4 or 5 or whatever it is. And so it's probably only pushing about 30 or 40 megabits per second over my network to the PC, which is fine. Something that was full NDI, like the Bird Dogs, would push, I don't know, 4K 60, maybe 200. It would be quite a bit. So 4K 60 over the PTZ Optics Move 4K, and those are available. Actually, we have them in stock and they're available on our website if you're interested in it. Video seems to be lagging just a bit behind the audio. Well, sorry about that. Not sure what the problem is there. I see a little bit of that. Let's turn off some things here and see if that helps out a little bit. Because I see the same thing on my confidence monitor. So if I turn it off and don't have to look at it, then it won't be so bad. And that could be that I'm stressing things more at some point than they can take. But let's get into some numbers. So let's start with a picture first. Here we go. Here's a picture. So we're going to do this picture. And if you would imagine this whole picture, the entire frame is 4K, 3840 by 2160. That is the resolution that we are streaming today. Now this picture, unfortunately, is not 4K. I kind of copied it. So, but it does give you the relationship in size, resolution-wise, between a 4K image and a full HD image. So that full HD image is 25%, 1/4 of a 4K image. That is 4K is 4 times as much resolution, not twice as much, 4 times as much as HD. So 4 times as much data to get the image. Now, we can also say that we're looking at 8K, It's coming down the pike. 8K is going to be 4 times as much as 4K. That means it's going to be 4 times as much as 4K, 16 times as much as HD. Holy cow. All right, so let's go back and look at those numbers specifically. So we've got HD is 1/4 of 4K. Now you need to take notes at this point because there's going to be a test in just a minute. We haven't talked about 720, but 720 was sort of a semi HD, semi-high definition resolution. ESPN, the famous sports network, used to do their broadcasts in 720 for the longest time, and in fact, even more recently, they're still doing 720. They're doing it at 60 frames a second to smooth out the motion, and we'll get to that. But 720 is only 2/3 of HD in terms of the resolution size and the approximate data rate, which means if you are a math whiz, that 720 is 2/12 or 1/6. I guess I could have simplified that fraction. 720 is 1/6 of 4K. That means you need 4 HDs to make 4K or 6 720s to make 4K. So if you're streaming at 720 and you're thinking of moving up to 4K, you're talking about using 6 times as much data, assuming you use the same frame rate. Now just for fun, let's throw in 8K. So 4K is 1/4 of 8K. HD is 1/16 of 8K. That means 16 high definition resolution images, video, would be the equivalent of 1 8K, 16 HDs. Or 720 is 5/48 of 8K. Well, let's simplify that a little bit. 48 is almost 50. 5/48 would be, 5/50 would be 1/10. Is that right? No. 5/50 would be, it would be 1/10. No, it's got to be more than that because it can't be less than 70. See, I didn't even get my math right. So who knows what I was thinking? Who knows what I was thinking? It was whatever it was, it wasn't right. It wasn't correct. All right, so let's talk about frame rates for just a second because we've got the resolutions down as we talk about the different sizes. So here in the US, the common frame rates are 30 and 60, and 30 is half of 60. In Europe, and I think maybe even Australia, I'm not sure, 25 and 50 are more common frame rates. And the reason for that is electricity, the cycles in the electricity. Here in the US, it's a 60 cycle basis. In Europe, and I think, again, probably Australia and Japan and places like that, it's on a 50 cycle basis. And it just has to do with the way the electrical grid was laid out, eons ago when they first started electricity. So that's what sort of determines our frame rate. And if you ever have a situation where your frames are kind of flickering, or if you get a black line that's moving up and down, that may be because you're using a frame rate that is not compatible with your local electrical system. So check that if you're on the road, or we had somebody that bought a camera off of eBay, and it was a PAL camera, a 50 frame a second camera. And they didn't realize that when they bought it. That's why it was so inexpensive. Anyway. All right. So we've got frame rate and we've got resolution, and those things sort of work together. So if, for example, let's see, if we were doing a basketball game, we would want a higher frame rate because that's going to smooth out the action. A lower frame rate means essentially less little teeny pictures per second. Yeah, let's try that. Try a little bit of audio delay. That's a good idea. Sorry about that. Right now it's set for 50. Let's set it for 80 and see if that clears it up. I meant to check this a couple of weeks ago when I first added this camera because I thought the audio delay was a little bit different. So right at this point, we have changed from 50 milliseconds of latency to 80 milliseconds of latency. And we'll see if that takes it. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Ken. So ESPN used to do 720/60, really common. It was not the greatest resolution, but unless you're comparing it side by side with another TV or something like that, you may not notice, but you will notice the smoothness of the motion. So as we go from 720/60 up to 1080, you say, okay, well, we're going to compare the amount of data. Maybe we need to shift back to 1080/30 and not do 1080/60, because 1080/60 would be twice as much data. Okay, well, let's try a question for just a second. 1080/60 is what percentage of 4K 30? All right, so we're talking about data now. What percentage is 1080/60? All right, 1080/60 is twice 1080/30, and there are 4 1080/30s in 4K 30. So the answer would be, and unfortunately you guys are on like a 20-second delay, so I'm not going to wait 20 seconds for you to come up with the answer, but you can come up with the answer. I'll give you 3 seconds because I'm about to tell you the answer. 1080/60 is twice 1080/30, and there are 4 1080/30s in one 4K 30. So 1080/60 is 50% of 4K 30. So if we were going to do, if we're going to figure out our bit rate based on that, we've got a standard. Our 1080/60 might be, we might be using maybe 6 megs. Michael says he'd rather do 720/60 than 1080/30. I'm with you on that one. 1080/30, a good stream is going to be about 4.5 to 5. You could push it for more for 1080/30. Talking head like this, you're going to get away with fewer, a lower bit rate, because all these pixels aren't changing. Well, they changed just a little bit. Actually, they should be moving right now, but they're not. They're still. Wonder why? Huh? Our little video right here is not moving. There it is. Now it's going. So some of these pixels, like the pixels down here, are not changing a whole lot. What do I have right here? Got some piece of gear right there. Is that the straw for my drink? No. Anyway. Is that, it's probably part of my screen. Maybe it's a shadow in my backdrop. Anyway, sorry. So, rabbit, squirrel, so easily distracted. So if I'm going to do 1080/60, I'm going to stream it at maybe 5, maybe 6 megs. If I'm going to do 4K 30, I'm going to stream that probably not at twice as much, even though the amount of data, supposedly is twice as much. We've got all this data out here that doesn't change. I'm going to do 4K 30 at maybe 10. And if I'm going to go twice as much to 4K 60, which is what we're doing now, I'm cheating at 14. I would probably much rather be streaming at 16 to 18, because I think we're getting a little bit of fuzziness in here. Yeah, Michael's saying in the chat that you can't do that in sports because everything is moving. The camera is constantly moving. That's true. That's true. All right, let's do another challenge here. So we got that challenge. let's challenge with 4K 60 is what percentage of 8K 30? Well, it's the same thing, isn't it? Essentially, because 4K 60 is 2 4Ks essentially, and 8K is 4 4Ks. So 4K 60 is going to be 50% of 8K 30. Now, we're not going to have to know the 8K answers too soon, but I have a feeling that vMix is working on 8K right now. Right now, 4K 60 is their max resolution, and it's not their max frame rate, but it is their max resolution of 4K. Their max frame rate, I think, is 240, but there's not much out there that'll do 240 at this point. There's one camera out there that I know Eric Pratt at US Broadcast is working with that will do 240 at 1080. I think it's 1080. We'll have to see. We'll probably get him on at some point and see. So, all right, let's try one more challenge. Let's try one more challenge. Here we go. Bonus challenge. 1080/30 is what percentage of 4K 60? Okay. All right. So there are 4 1080/30s in 4K 30. That means there are 8 1080/30s. Excuse me. Let me get the math right. 1080/30. There are 4 of those in 4K 30. 1080/60. 4 of those. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way. Let's try one more time. See, math is hard. 1080/30. There are 4 of those in 4K 30. There are 8 of those in 4K 60. And there are 4 4K 60s in 8K 60. So that would mean 8 times 4. That means there are 32 1080/30s in 8K 60, or 1080/30 is 1/30th. Let's pull out your calculator and find out that percentage right there. Let's see. Okay, where's the calculator? 1 divided by 32. Oh, hold it. We had a bunch of other stuff in there. 1 divided by 32 is 3.1%. So 1080/30, if you're streaming in 1080/30 right now, you are streaming at 3% of what you might be streaming at in 5 years, 8K 60. What kind of horsepower are we going to need to stream at 8K 60? Now, Michael's saying in the chat, you know, is 8K going to be, is 60 frames a second to be fast enough for sports? Won't be require 120. And what we're finding is, I think the recent Super Bowl, I paid an upgrade to be able to receive that. I had to do it in 4K, and I was getting it in 4K 60 sometimes, but it fluctuated and dropped down to 4K 30 at one point, and then it dropped down to 1080 something at one point. And I think that may have been just because my internet wasn't fast enough to be able to take all that data. I don't know, but it's going to take a whopping sum of data to do 1080, to do 8K 120. I don't know that we're going to need a speed that high for the action. We might appreciate it for the replay, but I think at some point, even though the resolution can get greater and greater and greater, because the screen is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, I don't know that the frame rate is going to be beneficial at 120 or 240. I just don't think there's going to be enough benefit to the eye to see. I mean, motion pictures are 24. Those look pretty smooth, right? Yeah. So we'll see about that. But 8K 60 is going to take 32 times more data than 1080 30. And we'll fudge those numbers a little bit again, because the background's not always changing or this or that. So let's say it only takes 25 times more horsepower, 25 times more horsepower. We're going to have to get some more horsepower out there, or we're going to have to find more efficient ways of dealing with all that video. All right, so how does that help us? I went way off on that rabbit trail. How does that help us decide what we want to do our live streams at? And I think I'm all out of pictures and graphics, so you have to go back to just the regular me at this point. What the rule of thumb that I've used for years, and in fact, there was a graphic that I think Jan Ozer published maybe 10 years ago that talked about what people were doing for live streaming back then, including the major networks and ESPN. And some of that I think is still valid. I mean, I think HD 1080p 30. Oh, let's talk just a little bit about P's and I's. If you're live streaming, unless you have a requirement to output an interlaced video somewhere for TV, probably, or unless you're dealing with an interlaced camera, everything needs to be progressive. Live streaming is progressive. All the video is processed progressively in vMix. vMix has the ability to de-interlace video that comes in interlaced. Interlacing is basically the old TV way of sending out a broadcast, is that it would send out lines of video and it would send out every odd line as one frame. So you'd have one interlaced frame that was just basically half the amount of data. And then immediately it would send out the evens and they would interlace. And then you would see an image. And then the odds would go away and a new odd would come back in. And then the evens would go away and a new even would come back in. So you'd get this interlaced video. But when you're live streaming, it picks up all the little changes in the lines. So you can't do that. So you have to have your video de-interlaced. So everything we're going to be talking about is progressive, because 50i is the same amount of data as 25p. 60i is the same amount of data as 30p, or 5994i is the same amount of data as 2997p. So let's stay with the p's and let's not use any decimal points in any of this stuff. Call it 30s and 60s, 50s and 25s. So 1080p 30, a good bit rate is going to be 4.5. So that means you have to have 9 available, 9 megs upload, to be able to do a 4.5 stream. 1080p 60, which is very popular now. That's what we're recording at my church. We're not live streaming it yet. We might this Sunday. We'll just have to see. We're live streaming 720 60, and we're recording 1080 60. And I think 1080 60 for a church could be 5. 6 would be better. For a basketball game, I would want to use 10, because it's just going to be a smoother stream. You're not going to be missing frames. You're going to have a bigger pipeline to shoot all that stuff down. 4K 30. We were live streaming 4K 30 several weeks ago, and we were live streaming that at 10, I think. I'd have to go back and check. Today we're streaming 4K 60, and we're streaming it at 14, but I'd rather be streaming it at 16 or 18. I just don't have that much bandwidth to do, and I may have to drop back after. Ken says old electronics could only handle interlaced video. Yeah, it was just too much data. If you had a full frame of video, it was way too much data. And here I am, kind of bumping my head against the same ceiling. Well, it's not the same ceiling. It's a different ceiling. It's a higher ceiling, but I'm still bumping my head against it, 4K 60. And I'm going to bump my head against the ceiling at 8K 30, and then I'm going to bump my head against the ceiling again at 8K 60. And if Michael Quist is right, I'm going to bump my head against the ceiling at 8K 120, which means our engines are going to have to get more efficient, and they're going to have to be more powerful. But for today, and Michael says he's got 300 up. Well, 300 up, he can do anything he wants. Maybe. If I had 300 up, well, here we could get a gig up. I've been offered that. If I'm willing to pay $1,000 a month, I can get gigabit asymmetrical. Or is that symmetrical? Anyway, 1,000 up, 1,000 down. And where I can do anything that my horsepower, my PC horsepower would allow me to do. And it would be fun to test that. Today, when I live stream, I'm live streaming right now. Let me just double check it. I am live streaming 2160, that's 4K, P at 14 megabits per second. Audio is 128K, that's not much. Let me pull up some little stats right here. My PC is sending 14.2 to 16.7. Now, again, vMix's bit rate is set at 14. The actual internet impact is anywhere from 14 to 17 because other things are happening at the same time. And as we say this, I'm starting to get yellow flashes here that says that my internet is not fast enough to accept everything I've got going. And there's really nothing I can cut back on right now. I think. Yeah, you know what I might try? I may be overloading the video card. Let's check the video card. You guys want to see what I'm looking at here? Let me do a little screen capture here and show you what I'm looking at. Let's do display number 3. Is that it? That must not have been it. Let's try internet, desktop capture, local capture, display number 2. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is display number 2. Let me put a little sharpen on that so that we can see it more easily there. There we go. There's a sharpen. And so, so here's my Ethernet. And right now, ooh, my send dropped way down. Why did that? Oh, because I'm not sending much video. It's a frozen picture. Let me add myself to that and see if that doesn't change it a little bit. Okay. So now I'm down here in the bottom corner, and the send went up a little bit. And let me add this internet as a bug in my main shot. Let's see. So that's number 101. So let's add 101 here. And we'll turn it on. And we'll crop it. Yep, bear with me here. Okay, and we'll shrink it a little bit. We'll put it up there. So now when we go here, we can watch this jump up pretty quickly to 1450 because we've got all this movement over here that we don't have. Let's go back to the other shot. And it goes from 17 down to 6, down to 8. Now we're still receiving the same amount down at the bottom, right here. We're still receiving that from the camera. So that shouldn't change as we go back to the big image. Let's try that again. And we can still see, well, yeah, it's 37, 36. But we've gone up to 15, 16, 16.8, and I've got 20. 17.8, and I've got 20. I am just living on the edge right here for sure. Living on the edge. You don't want to be on the edge. There was 17.1. And at some point, we may see the stream button begin to flash again if something else. And I'm sending audio, and whoever knows whatever kind of overhead I'm sending back and forth to AT&T or who knows where. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Michael, I am using an NVIDIA RTX 2080 Ti. The CPU is an i9 10th generation, so that's going to be a 10900KF, which is a 10-core system. Let's see, video streaming quality, profile high, level 4.1, preset very slow. Let's see if we can check that, Ken. Yeah, I can't get into that right this minute, but I'll check that later. But that may be a good combination right there. Let's see. This is Ken's comment right there. We'll go ahead and cue that up and put that in. Yeah. All right. So let's move into the post show, and we'll get some of your questions, and we'll look some more at this. What's really interesting, number one, you can see the cutoff right there when I shifted my image out of the mainstream. And I think what I want to do is I'm going to let this ride on top of the closing so that you can see how the closing affects all of these numbers and how it affects and what happens when the recording drops off. So let's see if we can make this an overlay. Let's see. Let's bring it down here. Let's turn off that. And let's go into the main, and we're just going to crop it down. This will be okay. I promise. Don't go anywhere. You'll miss out on the good stuff. Okay. So we'll take that and we'll just do that as an overlay. Yep, there we go. And I'll be right back. Okay. All right, let's see. Can we move that out of the way a little bit? we can see that our send speed is still higher than it was before. Well, it may be just because this image is a little smaller and the background's not moving. Let's go back to our main shot and see if we can't see what happens if we go back to that, what happens to the speeds. We've got something covering up most of the motion. So let's fix that real quick. Let's see if we can't just move that somewhere else. Desktop capture, position, there we go. We'll just move that over there. There we go. Now we've got me back here. We can still see we're still sending, right much data. We're not recording, but we're also not getting flashes. I mean, there was an 18.9, a 19.0, and we're streaming at 20. So we had less than 10% headroom at that point. 19.5, holy cow. So we had no headroom at all. So yeah, not sure why we're not getting any stream flashing, but the only difference was we stopped the recording. So let's go into the recorder for just a second, and we're going to take it off using the hardware encoder, and we're going to manually start recording again. So we're recording again now, and look at the send right here. Sending speed has dropped because we turned the recorder on, and now the streaming is flashing again. Let's turn the recorder off. And the send speed jumped way up, but we're not streaming. I mean, we're not flashing video again. You can't see that, but I can. Craziness. Craziness. Let's try it one more time. Let's focus in on the GPU, this one. All right, so we've got 3D. That's what spiked right there, was the 3D memory. Video encode spiked a little bit. So let's go ahead and we're going to turn the recorder back on. So the recorder's on. We see immediately the video encode jumps to 88%. But that shouldn't affect the streaming, should it? But it is. We're now getting flashes in the streaming, and our sending has been cut in half. So we'll turn off the recorder. Our sending doubles immediately. Our GPU gets cut in half immediately. Keep in mind, we're using the GPU for the streaming, but not for the recording. At least in this little test just now. We'll have to see. I think something is amiss. Somewhere I've got a setting that's just not right. Just not right for whatever. Let's see. Dave says, let's go to post show. See if we can put Dave up there. Whoops. We'll take that off. And have we lost our let's see. Breakfast Blues, let's try again. Nope. Sorry, I've got a glitch in vMix Social. It is not sending Dave stuff. 1 second here. You know, it's kind of funny. Yeah, there it is. It's got the right post show stuff. Let's see. Pre-show, post show. That's not it. Well, isn't that interesting? Because we have this as pre-show, but that as post-show. Let's check post-show for a second. See what our layers are. Honeybee's blue, I think that's right. 1 second, guys. Breakfast table blues, that's what I want. Breakfast table blues. There we go. There we go. That's the one we wanted. That's the one we wanted. Now we need to fix its position. Got it. Okay. And now we were going back to Dave there. And he was asking about the stats in vMix. Let's see what the vMix stats show. Looks like a lot of source drops and renderer drops on the camera. And then there's a DeckLink mini recorder. Huh, didn't realize I was using that. It's showing a bunch of frame drops. And I don't think it even has a camera attached to it. DeckLink mini recorder. Well, does that sneak in there somewhere? DeckLink mini recorder, there it is. Well, let's just take it out. Huh. And it also could be a network thing because I'm using an NDI camera. I need to try, I want to put a 4K card in this PC and get a 4K output. We'll try that. Yeah. We'll try that out. Let's see. Ken's suggesting some dial-ins for that. And Ken is using a fast i7 and an A400. And the A400 drops off after 8 to 9 threads. And Scott's got a good question. I think I want to try if I can get my hands on a 3080 or a 4080 and see. And that really is the real question right there. Why would the internal recorder have an influence over the Ethernet send stream, especially when I turned off the hardware encoder for the recorder? Because the recorder is not sending this data anywhere except to the second drive. That is the question. And you could watch the internet, you know, it went from, what was it, from 14, 16 down to 10. And then when I turned, yeah, and that was with the internet speed the streaming data dropped almost in half when I turned on the recorder, but yet the message I was getting was that I wasn't sending enough. Well, I wasn't sending enough data. Where was the data? Let's try that again and put up vMix statistics and see if we can find the problem. So let's reset all of those and see if I can get you a capture on these. Let's see, does that, see if we can make that any bigger. Okay, how does that look? Yeah, that's lookable. That's lookable. So we'll take that and let's go ahead and give us this. So we've got something with some data in it. And then we'll overlay this over it. And let's just drag it down some. Can we still see what we need to in there? I think we can. All right, well, let's just see. And we have this GPU one. Can we kind of see that one in here so we can keep an eye on the GPU here and the Ethernet there. And let's turn on the recorder. Let's check specs on the recorder first. So the specs on the recorder are 4K, 60, bit rate of 16, H.264 main, no hardware encoder, no fault tolerant. We're not filling up that drive, are we? Let's check on that drive. No, we've got about half the drive available. Let's change the bit rate up to 25. See if that helps at all. All right, so you ready? Let's start recording. So we're recording now. There we go. We can see a spike in the GPU immediately. This is the 3D. It goes up to 80%. The streamer is beginning to flash. We don't see anything here. Few dropped frames there. We've got a webcam that we can get rid of. Something called virtual that's got some frame drops on it. All right. So we can see our Ethernet, our send is dropped to 10. Our GPU is doubled. Let's turn this off. And we'll watch our GPU come back to normal. The video encode, which was being used, which was way down, maybe that's where it wasn't getting enough data right there. Interesting. And the Ethernet, the send, you can see the sends were down here, and then it jumped up when we turned off the recorder. Spiked actually for a while up here, and then is dropping back down. Oh, sorry, you can't see the whole thing. You can see that's when we turned off the recorder right there. It spiked for a second, and then it sort of normalized at its 16, 17. Okay. Yeah, we can't really change anything. We can't really change anything with the streaming right now because we're still streaming. We'll have to try that later. Yep. So there we go. Let's see. Let's go back here and see. Yeah, Ken, that's what I thought. But it when I turn the hardware encoding on, and let's go back into all of that. Let's go ahead and put this back up as an overlay. There we go. And I'm going to turn the hardware encoding on in that. Use hardware encoder, DINK. Okay. And now I'm going to turn the recording on. So now we're recording, and we watch the GPU use right there spike at 84%. The video encode kind of spikes again because now we're using that. Ethernet wise, it's dropped down to 7 or 8. Even though we're streaming at 14. And in just a minute, we're going to get a notice. We're going to get some flashing, is my guess. Looking at statistics, we don't see any statistics. This virtual has been like that the whole time. It doesn't seem to matter whether we're going up or not. Now, the camera is dropping a bunch of frames. Let's see when we turn off the recorder if the camera stops dropping frames like that. All right, the recorder's off. Yeah, so the recorder is causing the camera to drop frames. Yep. Not sure what's happening there. We'll have to do some more research. Those aren't props. Those are the real thing. Yeah, but how do you phrase the question? I mean, it's a complicated set of circumstances, and this is the classic quandary that I think advanced users get is, I've got a unique set of circumstances, or what I think are unique, and something is amiss at this point. Let's go ahead before I even forget. I will send us a note to vMix, but I'm going to send us a support report. And let's see, that's settings, and then okay, settings, and then about, and then send support report. So we'll send it again. So we're sent to them. And let them see the show. That's right. However, I have a feeling that they might pop in on it every now and then. Just to see, what is this idiot saying about vMix this week? All right. All right. Well, that was it. Interesting show. And you see how I bump my head against the ceiling sometimes. Or it may be my beating my head against the floor. We're not really sure. And it's fun to try out new equipment and put it in ways that are different than what would be standard usage, perhaps. And you can see the effects. Yeah. Yep. So this is an i9 10900 KP, 32 gigs of RAM, move 4K camera, coming in 4K 60, streaming 4K 60, recording 4K 60. Yeah. There we go. There we go. And Michael, I agree completely. I agree completely. All right, guys. Well, I need to go build some PCs. Got a little backlog here. We need to unplug the backlog. But it was great hanging out with you today. Thank you for showing up and bearing with me. And we will see. All right, here's a comment from Scott. Can frame efficiency be part of it? When the CPU and GPU are under more load, the frames are of less quality, so smaller, and when not recording, but when not recording, the quality increases, so the push gets bigger. I don't know. You know, conceivably, the GPU, when I turn off hardware encoder on the recorder, the GPU is no longer in the ballgame. But yet it is. Let me do it one more time just to make sure. There's a reflection of my screen. That's why I keep turning that on. And so I'm looking here and, oh, let's turn it off. Make sure I've got the hardware encoder is off. Okay, we're going to do a record. Yeah, and it doesn't matter. Even when the hardware encoder is turned off, it still affects the GPU, like 90%. Yep. Okay. Yep. Should not have any effect at all, should it? Yep. Oh, let's try one more thing. Let's take the video, take the recorder and take the bit rate down to just like 4 and see what kind of impact that has. Yep. Can't tell. Can't tell. Could be. Could be. I would figure we had enough horsepower for all of this. We'll find out. We'll find out. Thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll be back next week with some other interesting stuff, whatever that may be. And loved having Scott here today. So we'll catch you later. Thanks for watching.